there is the rare instance in which we were told, people like myself and certainly athletes, stick to sports. We don't want to hear your political opinions. And then we hear people in politics give their opinions on sports. So it's very hypocritical, I must say. And not everybody in politics holds that belief, but some do. One of them being, well, before I even get to him, give me my theme music, carving up the context, and here we go. Carving up the context this week, and we've got a good one for you. So, West Virginia Senator of the Democratic Party, Joe Manchin, was talking the other day about NIL, name, image, and likeness for college athletes. And this has been a topic of conversation. I'll never forget the very first month of my show, all the way back in October, or it might have been November at that point of 2019. I was talking about how James Wiseman, currently of the Detroit Pistons, played back in Memphis, played briefly for the Memphis Wildcats back in college basketball. And then Chase Young, who's now with the Washington Commanders, played for Ohio State, both of them with a second pick in their respective drafts in 2020, both incredible talents in college, were suspended for ridiculous reasons regarding certain stipulations that the NCAA didn't allow them to, like in the case of James Wiseman, they didn't want his family to move to Memphis. In the case of Chase Young, it was like something about how he paid for his girlfriend to come down to watch him play in the Rose Bowl. It's crazy, crazy stuff. And finally, a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court said, I believe unanimously, 9-0, said that, hey, college athletes can make money off of their name, image, and likeness, which this is literally the definition of capitalism. Even one of the court's most conservative justices, a guy by the name of oh my gosh, forgetting his name. Blanked on him. What's his name? Supreme Court Justice was confirmed a few years ago. Oh my gosh, what's his name? Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh was talking and saying that, hey, in any other business, what is going on with these athletes would be completely unconstitutional. It would just be flat out wrong. This would not work. It'd be illegal in every other business for the athletes, in this case, the athletes, to be doing the majority of the work. Obviously, coaches are as well. Let's respect coaches, but athletes doing all this work, and they are not getting a penny and not allowed to make a penny for that matter. Well, Joe Manchin holds a different belief. Joe Manchin, Democratic Senator, West Virginia, was saying that, quote, it's getting hard to root for the kids when they're multimillionaires as freshmen and sophomores. Oh, yes, it is so difficult to root for somebody making money for their own merits, don't you say? So what I think is hilarious about this, and I've said this about anybody who has opposed NIL, and for the record, do I think there should be regulations on NIL? Sure. Yeah. Listen, I don't think it should just be a free-for-all necessarily, but I also think if I'm a Caleb Williams and I am literally the face of college football, or I'm Shedeur Sanders and I'm one of the faces because of my dad and because of my own production and Colorado getting all this attention and whatnot, if I'm one of these star or superstar college athletes, again, college football is the big money maker, but college basketball as well, women's college basketball, people like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Haley Van Lith, like athletes like that, sure, they should be allowed to make money for their own merits. I think it's funny. It's hard to root for athletes when they're making all these millions of dollars as freshmen and sophomores. Interesting, considering the fact that the coaches, who are huge, I mean, ask Alabama fans how much they like Nick Saban. Okay, as a Vols fan, love Josh Heupel. We were just going through coaches like crazy. We finally found our guy, Josh Heupel. He's the man. Tennessee, we got our replacement for the great Philip Fulmer, College Football Hall of Famer. Ask Ohio State in the brief time they had Urban Meyer how much they like him. Ask any of these organizations, any of these programs, ask their fan base how they feel about these all-time great coaches. Of course, they feel great about them. They love them. Yeah, these head coaches have been making 10, 12, in some cases 15 large for their efforts, for their coaching, and for their recruiting, as they should. No doubt about it. But the second these athletes, the absolute second these athletes say, hey, can we have a slice of the pie? NCAA, by the way, still says no. NCAA, and this often gets misconstrued and it gets mistaken, the NCAA does not pay these athletes. They don't pay them a dime, despite the fact that the athletes bring in all this money for them. It is, let's use an example. Let's say a local a local athlete from a local college said, hey, like I'm playing well. And a local burger joint said, you know what? We want you to advertise our brand. We want this athlete, let's say John Smith, just throwing out a generic name, John Smith. No, with all due respect, I know somebody named John Smith. Shout out to him and shout out to all John Smiths out there. But John Smith, we want him on a billboard on the interstate and in our local town, holding a burger or wearing a T-shirt with our name on it, and saying, like Jimmy John's or something like that, and saying we want him to advertise our brand because he'd be good for our brand. It's good marketing. That's who pays the athletes. That's who pays them. Angel Reese is making a ton of money in NIL. Caleb Williams, Shedeur Sanders, all these athletes are, as they absolutely should. But you have Joe Manchin, who, we don't like this. They're so hard to root for. Oh my goodness, these spoiled. By the way, it isn't like they're being handed this money. It's, again, Caleb Williams is bringing in millions upon millions of dollars in ticket sales. Check US. And by the way, Lincoln Riley deserves credit for that as well. But, check USC's roster and ticket sales and see if USC boosters felt great about where the program was at. See if USC fans felt great about where the program was at before Caleb Williams and before Lincoln Riley got there to Los Angeles, to Southern California. And tell me how much money they were making then as opposed to what they're making now. And that goes for just about every program. Ask Colorado fans how they feel about Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders and all these Colorado players, Travis Hunter, making the money that they're making and bringing them to a position of relevance and of notoriety. And by the way, the same could be said about LSU women's basketball, about Iowa women's basketball, the whole bit. This just putting off the fact that Joe Manchin, a public servant of the state of West Virginia and serving in the United States Senate, just so happens to live on a 65-foot boat in Washington, D.C. By the way, it's, I read this, experts, this according to USA Today, experts have said it's not quite swanky enough to qualify as a yacht. I'm just, I gotta admit, it's hard to root for a senator who's living on a boat and making this money from. The hypocrisy is beautiful. But you consider the fact that these politicians are making all this money from, you consider people making money from the NRA, are people making money from other political donors, but God forbid an athlete for his own or her own merits make a little something, something. Totally legitimate money for their efforts. Isn't that funny? So what Joe Manchin said, and some, not many, honestly, I think the majority of the country is like, yeah, you know what, they should make money. Some people disagree on whether there should be regulations. I think there should be regulations, but I've always, from the beginning of my show and even before that, I've been very passionate about, man, if I'm going out there and selling tickets and selling out stadiums and bowling, and I'm in the Heisman discussion, this is talking about college football, obviously, or in the NCAA tournament, men's or women's basketball, I'm bringing notoriety and relevance to my programs. I want to make a little money. Yeah, I think there should be, I think I should have the right to do that in America, in a capitalist society. I think I should have I should have the right to do that. But, people like Joe Manchin and other politicians, he's not the only one who can say this, but other politicians making money from donors and for their political campaigns and to live a pretty swanky lifestyle. Not all of them, but the ones who've been there for decades. Get to live a pretty nice lifestyle while, for the record, not accomplishing much of anything for the good of the American people. Isn't that funny? I love, and politicians are really good. They're really bad about this, I should say. How we hold, and I remember talking about this with Live Golf, that we got mad at the golfers for going to Live Golf more than we did for our own United States government being in business, being Saudi Arabia being one of our biggest trade partners for the longest time, despite the fact that they basically funded 9/11. We don't get on the politicians for that, but we give the golfers crap for. Isn't that funny? I think it's very interesting how that sort of parallels and how it all ties in. Interesting. All right. That's it for carving up the context. I just saw that from one of our United States senators. I'm like, boy, there's a lot of hypocrisy behind this. You know what I'm saying? A lot of hypocrisy. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.